I just want someone to love me for me. What you may not have an awareness of is that the one saying this is your inner child, and that is what this episode is all about. Your beliefs about your worthiness, your inner child, and how the energies of the Age of Aquarius supports your healing. Welcome to the Heal Your Love Wounds podcast. I am your host, Iris Sirianni. One of the most common things I hear from both men and women when it comes to their romantic relationships is, I just want someone to love me for me. And you absolutely deserve to be loved and accepted for exactly who you are. But you have to love and accept you before someone can love and accept you for who you are. You are only ever able to give the amount of love to another that you have for yourself, and you are only able to receive love from another to the extent that you love yourself. And a really good example of this is when somebody comes into your life and they want to love you and be with you and have you in their life, and you find yourself pushing them away, but then become angry and sad and really defeated when that person leaves. This is a really good example of this. So if you haven't embraced your true self, which involves doing some inner work and some inner child work, and we're going to talk a lot about the inner child today, but the inner child, until you've done this healing and this work, is really running the show. And until that time, you will bend and contort and mold yourself into being someone you aren't, so that someone will see you as worthy and lovable and that you feel validated. You will search for your worthiness through another person or things. I recently posted this on my Instagram. If you believe that you find your worth in a relationship, wouldn't that mean that you come from a place of already being unworthy? A lot of people don't really have the awareness that they do have feelings of unworthiness and that they do things so that people will see them. But if your first source to finding worthiness and love is outside of yourself, this creates codependent situations that can go horribly wrong, and yet will stay even when it's unhealthy or abusive, because you haven't healed that part of you that never felt like you deserved to be loved, accepted, seen, understood, or that you belong, or that you even fit in. And in our romantic relationships, it will place a tremendous amount of responsibility on the other person to be constantly validating. Although if you're in a toxic relationship or a very unhealthy relationship, there isn't a lot of validating going on anyways. And this, incidentally, is why we stay in unhealthy relationships and situations longer than we know we should. We always have that feeling that something doesn't feel right, but we have a fear of leaving. Because after all, if the relationship were to end, we would feel unsafe and unloved and unworthy, and we would scramble to cling to that person or that situation or move on to the next person, because who are we? How do we find our worthiness if we aren't with somebody? And if we haven't had that awareness that everything we are looking for from another person can actually be found within. And so that is why we will stay in these unhealthy situations and relationships, because there's a lot of fear of letting go of what is, because who are we if we're not with that person? Where do we belong? How do we get love? How do we feel seen? And there is that small person inside of you that, while growing up, perhaps never felt the connection of that love and how to receive that love, and it can become quite distorted. So this is the work. This is healing your inner child and really taking over the reins from that small person that has always been trying to get that love and let them finally rest. Relationships are always how we play out our subconscious beliefs about who we are and what we're worthy of receiving. And until we awaken to what our patterns are that support our beliefs, because we start with a belief system and then we start having behaviors that support our belief systems, and then we create patterns around all of that. And until we awaken to that, we will be presented with people and situations who they might look different from the outside, and it starts off appearing to be different, but it ends up being the same thing in the end all the time. And we wonder why this keeps happening to us. Why do we keep getting ourselves into these situations? But I'm finding more and more that as we move into the Age of Aquarius, or move ahead into the Age of Aquarius, which is all about the expansion of our consciousness and knowing the truth about who we are and bringing our uniqueness into the world, that more and more people are waking up to their own power, although they don't realize it yet. Right at the beginning of having this awakening and expanding consciousness, it creates a lot of stress and tension and depression and unhappiness and a lot of confusion. But this, in my opinion, is a very good thing, even though it doesn't feel very good. But it's also the process. It's not an overnight thing. It just doesn't clear up overnight. It's a tearing down of what was and allowing for something new to come in. So to fully embrace this growing awareness and inner power, we have to heal and forgive and release all of the pain and patterns of behavior that created the unworthiness we subconsciously have come to believe about ourselves. And it's been my personal experience and with clients that I work with that this process is gradual and it does happen over time, and there are always new things that are coming up. But the really beautiful thing about this is all of this expansion is what's prompting the whole self-love movement. Now, some people believe that the whole self-love movement and choosing yourself is selfish and narcissistic, but I don't believe that's the case at all. In my opinion, it's a shift in paradigms from needing something external to validate us and switching that and shifting that to seeing that everything that we need, including love and validation, is already inside of ourselves, and that our consciousness is expanding, and we are reflecting as we do that healing. We are reflecting how we feel about ourselves and the power that we have within ourselves to feel worthy and to be the love that we're wanting to have in our lives and deserving of everything that we want for ourselves. We actually spread that out into the world, not from an egoic perspective, not to get something from somebody else, but because we have this strong essence about who we are and how unique each one of us actually is, we see that we don't have to get things from other people. We don't have to trample on people to keep them small and make them feel bad. We share the essence of who we are with the external world, and it's a complete shift in paradigms. How can we properly love and send that love out into the world when we are still operating from old programming and fear-based thinking and feeling unworthiness? It's a shift in paradigms from the inside out versus the outside in. But before we have this awareness and this awakening, we spend a great deal of our time and energy trying to prove ourselves. We invest so much of ourselves in order to get that validation from outside, from people, from our jobs, from social media, and we're going to talk about that next. So here are some of the ways that we are trying to prove ourselves to things outside of ourselves. We do it by being in relationships that we feel uncomfortable in, we feel awkward, we feel like we don't fit in, and we struggle in. We struggle to keep people in our lives. We have a fear of people going. The relationships are riddled with chaos, and there's extreme highs and lows, or there can even be something as simple as you just don't feel right. It just doesn't feel, the relationship just doesn't feel right for you. But we keep pushing forward in the relationship. We do it by saying yes to things when we don't want to do those things. We do that in our jobs by letting our managers, bosses, or coworkers pile things on us. We do things for our partners. We jump through hoops for our partners. We do it by taking lots of selfies and then posting the one we think is best on social media, and then second guessing the photo and taking it down, or in some cases we may take it down because it hasn't got a lot of attention, so we feel it's not good enough and we don't look good enough and nobody likes it. We care more about what others think about us and what we're putting out into the world rather than what we think about ourselves and how we feel proud of what we're putting out into the world. We do it by setting such high expectations to succeed. And I want to spend just a minute or so on this, because there's a difference between setting high expectations to succeed for the purposes of once I get there, then they'll see me, then I feel like I've accomplished something, then my parents will be proud of me, then I'll feel significant in my relationship, then I'll get that raise. So it's all about the perspective of having the high goals and the high standards and this high expectations to succeed, because once you get there, there's a reward at the end of it, versus having goals and aspirations. I am all for that, but from a place of, because it fills your heart and your soul, and in turn it helps other people in the world. It makes you feel good to be able to help other people. So there's quite a difference in there. We spend a lot of time proving ourselves by climbing our way to the corporate ladder and being in jobs that are soul-sucking. So you can tie this in with the one that I just talked about with the high expectations. But the soul-sucking job is you know that you don't feel good in this job, but there's a fear of leaving this job. And again, it's once you get to the top of the corporate ladder, wherever it is you want to go, there's something for you there, but you're also sacrificing a great deal on the climb up. And this last one is a little bit of a touchy subject, but I really want to include it, and that is we try and prove ourselves with too many cosmetic enhancements. I believe that there is nothing wrong with cosmetic enhancements. I look at cosmetic enhancements, and this is just my opinion, like getting your hair done or getting your nails done or putting makeup on, or even putting seat and steering wheel covers in your car. It gives you a refreshed look. It makes you feel more alive and more free. I know that not everybody shares that opinion, and that's okay. But when we are continually looking for more and more and more, could there be something underneath the surface that is just being covered up? And only you would know what is true for you, and only you would know how much is too much, because in your heart of hearts, you know, in all of these cases, we feel it in our heart, we feel it in our body, that we are covering up a feeling about who we are and what we're doing so that we can feel better, or that there's some type of reward at the end of it. So it is very subjective, and there's no judgment around any of this, not just the cosmetic enhancements, but about any of this. This is about being true to what is true and right for you. So let's move on. All of those are examples of ways of how we continually try to strive and to be seen and to fit in and to feel like we're worthy. And I know that I use that word worthy quite a bit, but it is the basis for a lot of things that we do in our life. The problem with working so hard to prove your worth is that even when you do get to that place where you can finally say, whew, now I don't have to work so hard to prove myself. I've accomplished what I've accomplished. They see me. I feel good. Now I can relax. But it only lasts a very short while, and you quickly see that that is so not the case. If this is resonating with you and you relate this to a relationship, you will know that yes, you got the guy, you got the girl, but now you're struggling in that relationship for any number of reasons. But if you know your worth and your value and you've done some work, it will be easy to see any relationship that isn't the right relationship for you, and you can bow out gracefully, and not because it's a I'm better than you scenario. It's because I see that you're not at the same place that I am, and that's okay. You're not for me. But if you haven't done the work and healed the part of you, that inner child part of you that is still running the show, the cycles and patterns will continue to repeat themselves. So these are just a few examples of how we try and prove ourselves, and it's really, really difficult trying to not be your true self. I wrote this story in my recent newsletter. It's a personal story. And if you want to join my newsletter, you can visit my website at irissiriani.com. I'll include the link in the description box below. But when you join my newsletter, you'll also receive a free guided yoga nidra meditation that I did. So what I wrote in my newsletter is, I remember years ago I was in a relationship with a very dynamic man. He knew exactly who he was, what he wanted, how he ticked, and I remember feeling really off, not because of him, but I always felt like I didn't fit in. Well, I felt that way because I didn't. And the more he was authentically himself, and he wasn't mean or rude or anything like that, the more I tried to prove that I fit in, because I so really just desperately wanted to be a part of his life. So I tried hard to not be myself until one day I was just feeling so uncomfortable and horrible and awkward. And I said to him, I don't know how to be, because he had asked me what was wrong. And I said, I don't know how to be. And he laughed and he said, well, what do you mean? Just be yourself. But I couldn't be myself because I didn't know myself, because I was in a pattern and had a belief system that I had to be a certain way in order to get noticed, and that I was a somebody. So when somebody actually saw me for me, it made me very uncomfortable, because my pattern was to always try and mold myself to fit in to somebody else's life. So that was really interesting. That example is a really good segue into looking at how our patterns and cycles play out, and what we do when we are in those patterns and cycle, and what that can look like. So if I use the example of how I had to bend to fit into somebody else's life, when something wasn't working the way that it was supposed to be working, what I did was try harder to fit in. So that might not be your case, but some other examples of how we try harder is we do more, we work out harder, or more often, or maybe we're more strict with ourselves. Maybe we tighten up our diet and we do extreme things to have a better body, because if we have a better body, then we won't keep being criticized about how we look and our weight and things like that. Another way that we try harder is to jump through more hoops in our relationships, because if we do more and show up more and be the person that we think they want us to be, then they will see how important we are, how much we love them, and how much they need us. We will also take on more responsibility so that we're seen as this team player and that we get along with everybody else. And what this means in all of these cases is we have no boundaries, but we do this because we want to get to the top. There's always that pushing and striving and to reach these goals and to be seen in a certain way. And so what happens when all of our efforts are for naught and we're not getting that feeling that we're looking for from the acknowledgement and the validation and the how we feel like we fit in and we belong and that we are somebody, when we're not getting that, and when we try and try, we go into a bit of a downward spiral. We start having a lot of negative self-talk, and incidentally, the negative self-talk and those types of patterns, there's a thread of that runs through us constantly anyways, but we might have a more keener awareness of how we're feeling when we go into this punishing ourselves mode by having negative and hateful self-talk. We shame ourselves We say hurtful things to ourselves. We beat ourselves up. And sometimes people will physically hurt themselves as a way of punishment. And when we are unable to process all of the feelings and emotions that we have, we will turn to try and distract and numb ourselves from the pain. And that's where a lot of addictions come in. So with substances, because addictions isn't just drugs or alcohol, there's all kinds of addictions. Some people turn to food. There's gambling, overspending, retail therapy, treating everybody in the bar to drinks, things that are in excess that will numb the pain. Social media, scrolling social media is a great distraction, and the cycles, they just repeat themselves. But with each cycle, we keep trying, we keep pushing through, we keep working hard to get to that feeling that we're constantly striving for. So these are the patterns and cycles of how we are always trying to prove ourselves, to get that love, to get that validation, how we just spend so much time and energy to be seen, to be loved. And all of this really just gives our power away to the people and the situation and the things. Another numbing thing that people do is, I mentioned retail therapy, but there's also this buying that thing, that next big thing that will make you be seen a certain way. But all of this is giving power away to the objects, the people, the situations that we find ourselves in, and all of the ways we use to distract and to numb our pain. And perhaps this is the very exact thing that you're waking up to right now. And a little bit of encouragement for you, if you are wakening up to this right now, is that it's not an easy time, but when you stick with it and just allow yourself to go through the process, it will get easier. So let's have a look at this inner child that I've been talking about. Our inner child, even though we're adults, there is still a small person that is the one running the show. It's he or she is the one that is still looking for everything that wasn't present when we were young. We learn a lot when we're kids, not just by the things that are said and done, but also the things that are not said and done, and the things we see and experience. I talked a lot about healing self-worth and the image we have of ourselves in a previous episode, and I'll leave a link below this episode to that episode. But it's from our experiences growing up that we form the foundation for everything. And if we think about this for a moment, where else would we learn about anything related to love and connection and trust and so much more? Everything we learn when we're young. And it doesn't matter what age you form the beliefs you have, it's still your inner child that's working really hard to get love, to feel safe, be seen, be understood, to be accepted, to fit in, to feel like you're somebody, whatever it is for you. Your inner child doesn't know anything different. I mentioned at the beginning of this episode that the Age of Aquarius, which is all about the expansion of our consciousness, knowing the truth of who we are, and bringing each of our uniqueness into the world and creating more community and soulful connections. This is why people are starting to wake up. People are starting to leave unhealthy relationships, and they're leaving careers that they've had forever to pursue work that has more depth and meaning, and that allows them to connect with people really at a heart space and wanting something much more connected. It's why people are moving away from the denseness and heaviness of people and things in their lives and looking to connect with like-minded people. As we go through this process of awakening and expanding our consciousness and healing, it's very common to feel very dark and depressed and confused, and quite often the people that are our friends and co-workers and partners in our lives, they no longer resonate with us. They're not on the same page as us, and so we feel very lonely and isolated. So as we move through the denseness and heaviness of what our life was, we are looking to connect with other like-minded people. It's also why we're becoming more conscious of the planet and want to connect with nature more. Never did I ever believe that I would find comfort by hugging a tree, but it's a true story. There's a deep connection with nature and the natural flow of how nature works and the energy that exists in nature. It's why as we transition, so many are experiencing darkness and depression as they let go of everything they knew and believed to be true to embrace the true nature of who they are. It's the reason we have so many people becoming interested in the healing power of crystals. We're becoming interested in quantum physics and meditation, energy healing, yoga. We're being drawn to spiritual concepts, and we want to experience retreats, all to help us on our healing journey. And it's why there are so many light workers and healers and coaches. And we're seeing a shift in how we want to love and be loved, supported and support and help others rise up and move into a place of more love and compassion and acceptance for who each one of us are. So I alluded to this just a short minute ago, is that not everybody is awakening to this, and that's okay because it's not their time. There are people who are very happy with their lives and how they do their lives, and it's not our job to convince others to take this journey with you. I remember when I was starting with this experience, and maybe you're having the same experience yourself, is that as you start to awaken and you start to do your own inner work and you look for like-minded people or different mentors that are going to help you along the way and do this inner work, you want to share your experiences and what you're learning with other people. And other people might not be so receptive to it. They might not understand it. They might think it's too woo-woo, and that's okay. So it's not your job to drag them along with you for the ride, because they're not there yet. They're not ready, and they might never be ready, and that's perfectly okay. Your work is to focus on you and being the best you and healthiest you and most aligned with your heart version of yourself that you can be, and just go through this process. I hope that you have found this episode valuable and helpful, and there are some things in here that have resonated with you. My work is helping women heal the pain from their past that have been playing out as patterns in their unhealthy and unhappy relationships. If you're interested in learning more about me and my work and my coaching programs, please visit my website at irissariani.com and subscribe to my newsletter, as I mentioned earlier on. And until the next episode, be you, be brave, forgive yourself and others, live big, trust yourself. Make the tough decisions even though it may break your heart. Trust that what and who leaves your life is meant to leave. Have faith that the space that's left will be filled with new experiences and opportunities that expand your heart and your life.